everybody, and welcome to the Cheesycast, the sporadic online artist interview series podcast. I'm your host, Cheesymanfredo, aka Alfredo Morales, and today we're going to be interviewing a comic book creator, Zander Cannon. Most famous work is Kaijumax, which is also I'm a big fan of. But I'm going to hand over the floor over to Zander so he can explain a little bit more about himself. And here he is.
Hey, how's it going? I'm Zander Cannon. I'm a comic book artist. I've been working in American comics for, 25 plus years. And Kaijumax is my latest comic. It's about a prison for giant monsters.
Yeah, it's a prison drama about giant monsters.
Right. One of those, like one of the many, right?
Right, exactly. Right. I would say you're more than like just a comic book artist. I mean, you also write the comics, right?
Yeah, that's true. I mean, when people, it's hard to know what to say. It's like, well, I'm a cartoonist. I mean, that's like that covers everything. And then when people ask you what you do, they want to know what your day-to-day job is. And it's like, oh, well, I'm a comic book artist. Like, that's what I do right now. And I mean, a writer and artist.
I do that too. When people ask me like what I'm trying to do, I'm like, oh, I'm trying to become a comic book artist because it's more convenient than saying like comic book creator.
Yeah.
You get me?
Right. And I think, well, and like when my I'm older than you are, and my folks, and people my parents' generation, when I was younger, they were like, oh, you're a cartoonist, like a political cartoonist, which I mean is almost they're almost extinct, but like that's what they thought. They thought, oh, you'd be the person who draws the caricature on the opinion pages in the newspaper, and it's like, and it was silly that I would be doing something like comic books, especially if I was like comic books, but they're not, Superman or Batman, things that people had ever, things that,
the mainstream stuff, right?
The older generation had heard of, or Donald Duck, I guess is probably what they would, Donald Duck.
Yeah, you say people like, oh, I want to like do cartoons, and they'll be like, oh, like Mickey Mouse.
Right. Yeah, they think I was an animator too, and it's like, yeah, it was interesting to sort of, in a way, it wasn't really like what's right. It was more like what's the shortest conversation I can have about this, so that like I don't have to explain it 10 times, but
that's true. It's sometimes it's just easier to talk to people who like make comics.
Yeah.
Right, because then you don't have to like thoroughly like explain every little you don't have to give the whole context, because some people like their knowledge ends and begins with Garfield. Like that's all they know about comics.
Totally.
That would happen to me when I was younger. Like they'd be like, oh, you're gonna make the next Garfield, and I'm like, when I was younger I would be like, no, I don't like Garfield, but now I'm like, God, I kind of wish I made the next Garfield. I'll be loaded.
Yeah, I'd like to make that Garfield money. But like I think it's kind of funny to sort of, I don't know. Yeah, it's a funny thing to sort of be somebody who's making something that it was such a niche thing when I was starting. I mean, now I think that there's younger people who can kind of say, oh, well, I'm a graphic novelist. I mean, to my generation, to sort of a Gen X generation, that sounds a little highfalutin, like, oh, like a graphic novelist. It almost sounded like. In the 90s when people
you have your head up your own ass.
Well, people are kind of trying to dress up a collection of Aquaman comics, or whatever.
Okay.
It's get you. But now I think, you say you're a graphic novelist, and I think that's kind of a legit, thing to say because, oh well, it's a 300-page book that didn't come out in magazines, it didn't come out online. It's more of a, it's a whole experience in itself. Maybe I don't know.
Right, it exists. Yeah, I learned like a couple of months ago that graphic novel is just kind of like the loophole term used to sell like a comic at a bookstore, right? Like back in the day, they would say like, yeah, we don't want to sell your comics in a bookstore, and then I think it was Will Eisner who said like, well, this isn't a comic, this is a graphic novel.
Yeah.
You gotta sell this in your bookstore. It's got novel in the name,
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and there were always these ones that were kind of like, that were in before that, like Raymond Briggs is a cartoonist who did like these books like The Snowman, and there was a comic that was about Santa Claus, and I mean they were kind of like children's books, but they were very definitely comics. I mean they had captions and word balloons, and I mean they read like a comic, and it was just funny that those kind of just got an exception. Or Tintin or Asterix imports and stuff.
Oh, yeah.
That stuff was in.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And it was
there's more prestige with like European comics because like they never I think it all goes back to like us having like the comic code, that really did screw up a lot of things. Every other country never had like a comics code, right? So their comics were never like it never killed all genres except for superheroes, and now it's just superheroes. You get me?
Yeah.
Well, and we're still like stuck on that mindset.
Oh, for sure. I mean, I think that it's nice that, but I mean, and even now that it's not superheroes anymore, it really still is genre stuff. Like that, even something that is very, very modern and very like Nimona, Noelle Stevenson's graphic novel that came out a couple years ago. Like even that is, is very much born of, sort of pretty typical genre stuff. I mean, it's a fantasy. It's got dragons in it and stuff. So like that we're still so sort of used to things having to be very familiar genre stuff. And I mean, I feel the same way. Like I wouldn't dare to do a comic that was just, like the same sort of stuff as
one genre.
Yeah, it would have to be a genre book. And I mean a lot of stuff. That's why I loved comics as a kid. Is that I loved genre fiction.
That's just a reason why I like Kaijumax, because it's like it's more than what you think you're gonna get, because it's like you see the cover and it's like, oh, giant monsters. I know a lot about giant monsters, but then it's like, oh wait, this is a prison drama, and then we read more and they'd be like, oh, yo, this is kind of funny, yo, this is kind of serious, yo, this is kind of like out there, yo, this is kind of deep. It's like all these different things, right? They don't suspect. And all the kaijus look like they look like plush toys, to be honest.
Yeah. Oh, right. Yeah.
So it's quite a mix. Like, yeah, I recommend you like merchandise that. That'd be pretty great.
Well, we
like
did make
Garfield suction cups.
Yeah, we did make a plush Electrogore.
I remember that.
Yeah, and that kind of came and went. I mean, I think that it maybe was ahead of the curve in terms of like people that read the comic, but
that. Yeah, I'm not gonna lie to you. Zander. But Electrogore is kind of like my least favorite design in the book.
Oh yeah.
I think there's a lot of like good designs in it, like a lot of it. Like for example, I like the Mothman guy, like the white supremacist Mothman character.
Yeah. He'd be super hard to make a plush out of though, like with all the tattoos.
He'd be super hard, but I'd say there's an audience with the rise of the alt-right. Like they might dig it. Who knows?
Oh boy, that's just what I want to sell to. Jesus. If it turned, I'd kill him immediately if that was the case. Anyway.
No, I think you're good. I think you're too self-aware. You wouldn't be like you wouldn't be someone who accidentally like promotes that stuff.
Well, right. It's funny because it's like
it's clear that he's a bad guy.
There's a funny thing about that because it's like early on, like I think that the comic had a reputation for being a little bit edgelordy, like it's pushing boundaries and it's dark and it's and it's not what you expect and it's like that's the thing that would. I mean, I'd shut it all down if people were like, oh yeah, you've got this great following of kind of pseudo or pseudo alt-right or alt-right adjacent people. I would have been like, shut it down, forget it, I'm out of here. Like that's not at all what it's scary. It's scary because you don't want that. You don't want people like that to be loving your stuff. That's bullshit.
I agree, but I feel like it's very easy to get rid of those kind of people. Like, I mean, if you just make it very clear where you stand in like the comic, right? Like, I mean, it's easy on social media to say like to distance yourself from those people. I mean, you should do that too. But I think it should be very like even like clear. I mean, there's some people who don't really care what audience like they kind of build, which is very not very
Yeah, that's not a very
what's the word?
2019 thing to think. Like,
Yeah.
don't be doing that in 20. Because I
um,
think that people. I mean, I think that people didn't know. People didn't know every minute who was reading their stuff in the
mhm,
20 years ago. Now it's
mhm.
like you do, and if you're not careful, you're gonna. I mean, if you're not careful and your message is a little bit neutral, you can get yourself into
Right.
deep deep shit with people, and that's no good.
I mean, that's kind of true. Then again, I don't know. A lot of people, like I'm gonna say, a lot of people on the right aren't that smart. You know,
Yeah.
like like for example, how like Alan Moore hates that people like Rorschach.
Oh yeah, I would too.
Yeah. I mean, yeah. Like I actually just recently finished rereading Watchmen, and it's like it's more very obvious that like yeah, Rorschach is very far right. I mean the newspaper that he reads is basically Infowars. You
Oh
know.
yeah, right. I mean, it
Yeah.
was comical when that came out. Like, oh yeah, right. Like, there's going to be a magazine like that, and it's like, oh man, no, they're totally,
Oh,
it
there
totally
is, and
is.
there's a web show like
Oh
it too. Yeah, and like there's so many people like today who don't like realize that. Like with the Watchmen show, like in the trailer they showed that like all the Rorschach fanatics became like this pseudo like white supremacist KKK group, and that pissed off like a lot of people. But it's like if you read the book, it's obvious. It's obvious it would lead to that,
yeah,
you know, right? Like the fucking newspaper he was reading was like defending the Klan, you know.
yeah. The New Frontiersman. I know it was such. I loved that there had an issue of it in the back, and then it had like
Oh yeah.
spelling errors and like things were pasted up screwy, and yeah, I loved it.
Hmm.
It was just
That's that's what I love about Alan Moore. He really likes expanding the comic, like the universe inside the comic. He just loves expanding it, giving it like wider context. Like he does that a lot with A League of Extraordinary Gentlemen, which I'm also a big fan of.
yeah,
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 yeah, I got
yeah.
all volumes of that.
Well, and I think too, like, I mean, I think that a lot of times writers come to writing because it's like you love world building, and I almost think that
Hmm.
you almost have to dial it back a little bit because it's like, yeah, I mean, every time I start creating a story, I'm like, well, what if this? Oh, what about this? Or how does the money system work? And I think that you have to say, oh, all right, I need to create this stuff. I need to put it in a folder. I need to remember all the important stuff, and I need to never show it to anyone because it's boring. I mean, people don't want to have to know. Like, people don't want to have to know how your money system works in order to be involved in the drama.
Xander, you're thinking this all wrong. You gotta like create a little like extra lore guidebook because people eat that up. They
Well,
love it when there's like a book that's like the extra like guide, like like when they have the Game of Thrones extra expansion book or the
oh, I 100%.
Sumerian, whatever it's called.
No, I 100% agree. I love that stuff, but I only love it if it's optional and kind of
Oh,
after
okay,
the fact. Like,
right.
because I think that if you do it like, if you're going to do 5 books and you do it after book one, then you got in your head, well, maybe they read the book and, maybe they read my lore book and I should put in extra little bits of lore. And it's like, no, you shouldn't. You absolutely should not.
Are you like J.K. Rowling who would go back and change like the ethnicities of every single character?
Well, I think that kind of, I mean, I think that it could go either way, but I think that that was, it's weird. It's just like let people enjoy the thing, and you
I
know,
I'm I mean yeah, it's
if there's
like
ambiguity,
or
that's
just
great. But I mean, I don't think that, and
you
I
can
think,
always write more books, J.K. Like you don't gotta like post that all on Twitter. No one needs to really know that.
well, and I think too that we can kind of, I don't think that I think that it's okay to just say this is part of this decade. Like
Hmm. Right,
that like Harry Potter is the 90s and early 2000s. Like
right, yeah.
it doesn't, not everything has to be perfect, but you don't have to keep bringing it up so that people go, hey, well, why is this this whole Nagini thing that she's this captured Asian woman, and it's like, yeah, that's just getting
Yeah, it's
ickier and
like
ickier. And you could, if you
yeah,
just
it's
left
for its like time.
if you left everything in the 90s, people wouldn't scrutinize it so much.
Hmm. Hmm. Sure, yeah, yeah. No one's gonna blame you if your protagonist is white. It doesn't really matter.
Right. Yeah, but if you keep
Yeah, yeah.
trying to say, "Oh, it's modern," keep, I mean, I do think that if there's got to be a reboot of this Harry Potter movies in 10 years, I hope that they do start to say like, okay, it's not going to all be a bunch of white kids, because
Um,
it's boring. And it's
what I would do would be like, let's just acknowledge that Hogwarts is a racist place. There could be more interesting dynamic there, yeah.
yeah, right, yeah.
Right. Instead of pretending
gonna...
that, like, instead of like kind of like woke washing the story, let's just have a scene where Harry's like, "Have you noticed that we don't have that many like black students at this school?"
Like, but then you would either have to just make the story about that, or then you'd have to go like have everybody shrug and go, "Oh well, time to fight snakes," you know. And
yeah,
I think it's too bad. It would be too bad.
It can work. Voldemort is like is Hitler, right? Like he's supposed to be Hitler technically.
Who? Voldemort? Yeah.
Yeah, well, he's like supposed to be Hitler.
I think that yeah, I don't know. I also just think I hate reboots anyway. I just feel like, well, yeah, Harry Potter is a cool idea. Let's make something in 10 years that's about another kid who has great things ahead of them, and have it not be Harry Potter. Have it just be its new thing. Harry Potter was a new thing. They didn't just remake Star Wars. They made Harry Potter. And
exactly.
I wish that people
would
make
that money.
Yeah. It's like the shortcut to making money is rebooting stuff, and I always think that's too bad.
That's true. All right, so before we got on to J.K. Rowling, we're talking about Alan Moore, who has complimented your book. He has like a quote on like one of the volumes, right?
Yeah, on all of the volumes. If I have anything to say about it.
Oh shit! Yeah, is it? Don't you have like a connection to Alan Moore?
Well, yeah, I did a series called Top 10. Yeah, America's Best Comics. And so Gene Ha and I were the artists on that, and I did it, and then I did the art on, or I did the pencils on Smacks, which was another spin-off from Top 10. So nice. I mean, I've spoken to him on the phone, like we're friendly,
Nice.
So, and that was the reason that I could sort of come to him and say, hey, do you think you'd give me a quote for this book? He wasn't picking it out of a stack. It was mailed to his house.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Well, it's cool that it's cool that he liked it.
Yeah. Yeah. So right? I mean,
that's quite an honor.
Oh, sure, absolutely. I mean, it's the golden the golden seal for right, especially exactly. For my generation. It's like I started reading comics like as Watchmen was coming out. I mean, so it's always been. I mean, he's always been this sort of incredible sort of godhead of comics.
Of course. Wait, so it was coming out as you were starting reading comics. Do you have any Watchmen floppies? Because I think those are hard to come by.
Oh yeah, no, I don't. I mean, I was not a collector. I mean, I was because everybody was like, oh, you gotta put your comics in bags. But none of my comics have ever remained in bags because I just kept reading them, and I didn't get it when it was coming out because I think it was a little. I had the impression that it was too it was violent and not really my thing. Like I was young and it was like if the first you don't want to have like the first or second superhero comics you read be like the revisionist superheroes. You want to at least
I mean, you want a little context.
Yeah, you're like, okay, I'd rather read a couple like regular Batman comics before I read the, throw all superhero comics on the head type of comics.
Yeah. I think I screwed that up. I think I did read Watchmen at a young age, but that's because the movie was coming out.
Oh, sure.
And I mean, now I realize like how bad the movie is. It doesn't really work, right? Like this story is clearly meant to be a comic, and like. Trying to translate it to like film or TV is just so like not a spit in the face, but such kind of like I can see that. I mean, I feel like Zack Snyder liked Watchmen, right? But like Zack Snyder didn't make Watchmen like ambiguous. Like he clearly picked a side when he made the movie.
Yeah.
Right, and it kind of kills it because the whole point of the book is kind of like no one's like 100% correct in their decisions,
Yeah. And yeah, I mean, I didn't love that movie, but I thought it was. I mean, it looked great, I mean, it.
Yeah,
and I don't.
None of his movies look bad.
I don't think that I don't think it's bad to translate it into TV and movies. Like I feel like that's Alan Moore's position, but I don't feel like. I mean, I don't personally feel like that, but I also think. Well, one of the great things about that book is that structure. It's sort of this Swiss watch of structures, and that's why I even think that this TV show that they're making. I was like. Well, I don't feel like these characters. I mean, they're really well done characters, but they're not sort of the iconic characters so much as they were like takes
true.
On other iconic characters, and like I was like, when I heard they were going to be making a TV show, I was like, cool, great, a 12 episode TV show that has this perfect, clock, motif. And I mean, I thought that sounded amazing. And then it's like, oh, it's like Watchmen 2 or whatever. I thought, all right, well, if they say if it turns out to be great, I'm sure I'll watch it, but nothing about it really grabs my attention. You know what I mean? Like,
I kind of see it as kind of like a little kind of like newspaper excerpts that they had like back in the Watchmen comic, like the little expanded lore kind of stuff.
Yeah,
that's what this miniseries kind of feels like to me. Yeah. I mean, I haven't seen it, but like I'll definitely check it out when it comes out. But anyway, enough about Alan Moore. We gotta talk about you.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
This is your interview. This is not the Alan Moore love fest. All right. All right. So I really want to know, what was your career like before entering the industry, and what was kind of like the thing that really pushed you into it. What was that little transition? You get me?
Yeah. I started doing comics I started drawing comics when I was 20 years old. So, I didn't have a career before that. Like, I just...
All right.
I did a comic book called... I did comic strips. And then when I was 20 years old, it was 1993. So the boom, the image boom was happening. And so, like... Oh,
right, of course.
Then I had, and I was pretty ambitious. And so I was sending out a lot of stuff, even when I was in college. And I'm like, oh, can I... I'm trying to get a job here. I'm trying to get a job there. Do you have any, penciling jobs or whatever? And I was kind of scattershot about it. But then I got hired by New England Comics Press, the people who did The Tick. And so
nice.
I did, and they hired me to do the Chainsaw Vigilante, because The Tick was hot stuff. They had done the Man-Eating Cow and Paul the Samurai as spin-offs. And so they wanted to do the Chainsaw Vigilante, who had been in one issue of The Tick. And and I think that, being 1993 and being like, like the hottest artists in the world were like Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and Rob Liefeld. It was like this sort of accepted wisdom to take these young talents and sort of, foist them off on the world, And so I did 3 issues of Chainsaw Vigilante. It's pretty dicey. Like I was not quite ready.
I'm looking at it right now.
Oh, really? Yeah.
It's a lot of yeah. It's very 90s. It looks like you use like a lot of shadow.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. I was trying all sorts of stuff, and the art, goes wildly in various directions for each issue, and I just didn't. I was just trying out all this stuff, and so. Yeah,
I don't blame you. I think it was Todd McFarlane who said, "When in doubt, ink it out."
Yeah,
So,
I was just and I was also I was writing and drawing and lettering, so I was I could only innovate so much because I just was under the gun all the time, and so. But each thing kind of led to the next thing. So like I did that, and they canceled it because it wasn't very good. And then I kind of had those 3 comics to show to people and say, yeah, here I did these comics. They're not great, but I can hit deadlines. I know what's required of a comic book artist. I can write. I can letter, etc. Just having all those skills, even if they're not completely up to snuff, means a lot. Especially if you kind of imply that you're willing to work cheap. So, and so then I did it, and then I got a job at Slave Labor Graphics, now known as SLG, and they asked me to do. I just did my own book, which was called The Replacement God, and that was a fantasy adventure, kind of Lord of the Rings, but funny, like a little bit, a change, playing to the tropes a little bit, and then so I did that for a while, and that's when I sort of came to meet Gene Ha, who was about to start doing Top 10, and he needed he needed like an assistant. But then I kind of became like a co-artist. Like I was going to be doing the backgrounds, but I couldn't do backgrounds the way Gene Ha does. Nobody can do backgrounds the way Gene Ha does. He's just he's this sort of singular talent in that way. Like, and so what ended up happening is that I ended up being more of the storyteller, like doing layouts and roughs and sort of blocking in where the word balloons go, and doing sort of the rough storytelling part.
Mm-hmm.
And as a sidebar, that kind of has become a little bit, kind of a part of my career too, is doing layouts for other artists, for more detail-oriented artists or new artists or late artists or stuff like that. Just doing layouts and sort of the rough storytelling aspect of it. Just because there's only so many people who can kind of do that stuff on a tight deadline, and and kind of under the line, sort of below the line type of stuff where you're not really being celebrated for it. You're just kind of telling the story. And okay, so I mean, after I did Top 10 and Smacks, that helped to get my sort of my
name out there.
My name was out there, and get my phone calls returned, kind of thing. But it was, but I actually, it was interesting because it kind of put me in. It kind of became a problem in that I was. I mean, my art style, what my art style looks like. That it's almost something, if I kind of push it, it can be almost mainstream, but it's not mainstream.
Almost. Yeah.
It's not mainstream. Like, if I could be like, I'm professional, I do this and this, I have this whole history. Can I do whatever, Batman or Green Lantern? And they'd be like, and maybe one editor would be like, oh, well, let's give you a shot. One issue. And then, I do one issue. They didn't want it. Even if I did the best job I could possibly do, that's not what they want. And so I kind of felt like I was beating my head against a wall, like, maybe not seeing the writing on the wall, and to use another metaphor, like to not sort of see like, this isn't where you belong. Like, don't just keep throwing yourself at DC Comics. They don't, it's embarrassing now.
Yeah, it is. And all those places have like their own in-house styles, so you got to be very uniformal, like a private school kind of shit.
Yeah, and I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, they make comics that look a certain way. I mean, whatever, it's fine.
I mean, there's people out there who love uniforms, so
right.
they're perfect for those kind of jobs.
Yeah, and I mean, they don't really, and so that was the time that I just kind of said, well, I'm going to do some other stuff, and so I ended up doing a lot of educational work. I was doing, books about physics. We did. I formed a studio with two other artists, and we were doing. We did a book about paleontology. We did a book about evolution, and a book about genetics. I mean, a lot of sort of, mass market but nonfiction works. And we always thought that this is going to be the breakout hit. Oh, this evolution book is going to be a hit. Like that it's going to be in every school. Just nothing quite hit. And I mean, they were fine. I mean,
let me pause you for a second. What era was this? Like, what?
This
what
would have been 2005 to 7 or 8.
Okay.
Maybe 2004 to 2009. Thereabouts.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and that was entertaining, and it was fun. And I mean, there's a couple like. Kevin Cannon, who is not related to me, but he and I were partners on a lot of these projects. Yeah, we're still doing like updates to one of the new additions to one of the books that we did, which is kind of fun. Cool. Like we can kind of come back to it and do a new chapter or adjust things or for new editions.
You get royalties for that?
Oh yeah, or it's royalties are different because they'll also. Yeah, we get royalties for the book, but also it's like, for a new edition, it's like, well, we need you to do new work, so we're going to pay you for new work, and then that doesn't go against the royalty structure. Anyway, it's a great deal. Because it's an actual, what would you call it? Like it's an actual like classroom textbook, as opposed to a mass market nonfiction. So anyway,
right. There's more of a guaranteed like audience with that,
Yeah, it's fun. We actually really enjoyed doing stuff where it's like, oh, let's do nonfiction stuff that is kind of like trying to communicate. And trying to communicate an idea as opposed to an adaptation of a literary work or telling the true story of a famous person. Because those are fine, but they're just narratives. And I thought it was kind of fun to sort of say like, well, let's try to explain philosophy, let's explain Plato's philosophy through comics. Like that's kind of fun because you can kind of use diagrams and you can kind of use flow charts. Just kind of using comics in a way that you couldn't very easily use prose and you couldn't very easily use film. You know, sort of something to playing to comic strength. But I got tired of doing that too because I felt like there was kind of an upper limit to how much of a reputation you could get. Like, you know, people read that they read those books if they're interested in what those books are about, but they're not there for you, the creator. You know what I mean?
You feel like you can't really express yourself that much.
Well, there's that, but I also just felt like it was hard to get some momentum. You know, because it's like, well, the only people that remember that you did a good job on this book are the editors. And that's good. But it's also like, well, I'd kind of like to just be able to do something, like tell a story and have it be my story and have people appreciate it for that. And so that's when I did, I was really frustrated with a lot of things. There were a lot of things going on. But like, I decided to do this book where I just decided to draw a 12 chapter book. Each chapter was 12 pages. So it was 144 pages total was what it was going to be. And I was going to do each page in an hour, kind of like a 24-hour comic, because I'd done some 24-hour comics in the last several years. And so so once a month, I would sit down for a Saturday, work 8 in the morning to 8 in the evening, and make 12 pages. And some friends and I did it, and it was really fun. You know, like we were all just hustling to do this book and to do, you know, each our own books. And that eventually I said I can't do it in one shot. So, but I kept doing it at sort of like simple art, you know, kind of rushed through. And that became the book Heck, which came out. Right. That ended up coming out in 2013. I started in 2007. Finished it in 2011, and it came out in 2013. And that kind of changed, a lot of things, where it's like, oh, all of a sudden people are like, oh, I like this. I like what this guy makes. I like his point of view. I want to see more stuff like that. And that got me on some people's radars in sort of like the small and like middle press kind of things, where Oni Press said, hey, do you want to do some work for us? And then, you know, I started the process of pitching Kaijumax around that time.
Nice.
So yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a little scattershot. I remember somebody, about the time that I started Kaijumax, they were looking at my table and they were listening to my patter at like Comic-Con, and they were like, they're like, wow, you know, you've had this long career. It looks like you've done everything right. And I almost started crying because I was like, it doesn't feel like I've done anything right at all. It feels like I have made mistake after mistake after mistake after mistake, and I am here and I don't know what I'm doing at all. because it just didn't seem like there was a logic behind it. It didn't seem like it seemed like I was making just endless like sort of errors, you know, committing all of these these errors and going like, I'm a mess. So that person actually, that made a big difference to me, that I was like, oh, I'm glad it looks like I'm doing things on purpose, because it doesn't feel like it at all.
Oh, well, actually, right before you said that part, I was just about to say, wow, it sounds like you did everything right. So
well, when I tell the story, it sounds great.
Well, I mean, yeah, like you got that, you could go back and retrospect, like, oh, that led to this led to that, you know, like there's probably like little mini horror stories that you're skipping over in between.
Sure. Right? I mean, I can say, oh, I did this and it led to that. Well, there was 4 years in between where it didn't seem to be leading to anything. So, yeah. So, I mean, I think that everybody's career, you know, probably looks like that a little bit, because even if you're just even if you're doing everything correctly, I'm putting that in air quotes, even if you're doing everything correctly, it's like at a certain point you're just, you know, you may feel like, oh, well, now I've gotten to this point and I don't like it, or I'm curious about other ways it could have gone. You know, I really relate to that, because I'm kind of like in a situation where like I have like my own webcomic series, and it's called Bongo and Luna, and it's decently popular. It's got like a fan base.
it's I have like my own Patreon, and compared to other people's Patreons, I'm growing pretty quickly.
Uh-huh.
But it's been very stagnant.
Yeah.
For the last couple of months.
Yeah.
Right, and it's very like and also Bongo Luna was just kind of like, it's like I make it up as I go along, right? It wasn't never like this long haul of a story or something I just had to tell. It was just something. It was just like a writing exercise, really.
Sure.
Right, and it's become very stagnant. It feels a little, I don't know, suffocating. So like so the part where you said like, oh, like after doing like the educational books, you felt very like not stuck, but you felt like in this one place and you kind of had to get out. So then you did like heck, and I'm like, okay, well now I'm in that phase where I was like, I gotta make my heck, you know?
Yeah.
Like I have something in mind that's like completely different. That's like out of the box. Well, for what people perceive me doing, because I kind of have like this title as the clown guy on the internet, right? And and you know that you saw when we met at Comic-Con, you saw me in the getup, right?
Well, you're like, I was dressed as a clown. I'm like, yep, I remember you.
Yeah. And I sent you the picture too, in case you forgot. But but now I'm gonna kind of transition into something a little bit more closely related to Kaijumax in the tokusatsu genre. And for our listeners, if you don't know what tokusatsu is, it's like a special effects genre. So something like Power Rangers falls under it. Kamen Rider, Ultraman, like Godzilla's like the grandfather of that genre, right?
Yeah.
And I'm gonna do something like that pretty soon. I'm gonna write like the most self-indulgent Japanese superhero story ever. That's only meant for me, like only ever meant for me to enjoy. And if people like it, well, they'll like it, I guess, right? But this was really meant for the 12-year-old version of me, you know?
Yeah.
Right. That's something like I really have like a passion to do, you know. So like, yeah, I'm working on my heck, man.
Well, I think that's it's interesting to sort of see like sometimes you know it's like you have to do something where you don't plan it out quite so much. You know, you have to take something where you're like, well, this is an idea that has a lot of potential, but it's not suffocating. You know what I mean? Like it, you know, like I did one where, I mean, heck is, you know, it's all based on Dante's Inferno, where it's like, so I've got all of Dante's Inferno that I can play with, but I don't have to, but it's not something where I have to make it all up. And it's also not something where I have to like catalog every last little thing. I can kind of just send someone through hell and like, you know, and I can come up with ways that he can skip certain places if I feel like it's getting slow. But part of it too was working fast and kind of saying, okay, I can only fuss around with this little idea so much. I can only change this dialogue so much because I got to get moving. I've got deadlines to hit. I mean, self-imposed deadlines, but and not worry about it being perfect. Because a lot of times I'd be like, I'd make a chapter and I'd be like, this sucks. Like, this is terrible. And then I would put it away and I would come to it the next time and I would go, well, it wasn't so bad. Like, I mean, maybe it's not the most perfect thing, but it's not so bad. Like, I don't need to fix it. And it's like, that was kind of amazing to find all these things that I thought I would definitely fix later and then realize, I don't need to fix them. They're fine. Like, you know, if I were to do it that much better, it would be a different story, you know? And I think that there's a lot to be said for that kind of imperfection and and being like, yeah, I don't, you know, it's nice when things are great, but when things are perfect, but sometimes it's better when they're a little bit messy.
Yeah, like I agree. It adds kind of like unique, like it captures like the moment, you know, of creation.
Yeah, and I mean, and sometimes it's like, sometimes you don't know what's going to be in panel 3 until you draw panel 2, you know, and you're like, oh, but you know what would be cool? Like, I had an idea, but you know, it'd be even cooler, this, you know, like.
yeah, I agree.
And there's a lot of sort of storytelling. You realize what your storytelling instincts are, where you're like, oh, well, I wanted to do this, but this panel is over one character's shoulders. I kind of need to show the other person now from over their shoulders and their perspective, like, because it just seems right. You know, it's maybe isn't getting the story out as fast, but it's checking in with all the characters, and I feel like there's a lot of that sort of like in the moment kind of boots on the ground comic book storytelling that sometimes sometimes I don't do if I'm looking at it from from too high of a perspective. When I'm really looking at the forest and not the tree.
Right. I do like that whole kind of like I'm trying to think of the word, that like that rush, that feeling of like not knowing where you're going with a comic, and you got to just kind of like do like a split-second decision kind of stuff, but not really technically because you're just alone in a room, right? But like it feels like oh god, like someone's got a gun pointed to you or something, kind of stuff. It's
you're
that
right.
Thrill.
I mean, it is that rush too, and I mean, when on the earliest chapters of this book, I was really holding to an hour a page, so I'm like literally, there's 3 minutes left. I need to make decisions now.
That's awesome.
And it's a weird feeling of like it is a rush, and it's like it's nerve-wracking.
you gotta kind of like create your own frills. It reminds me of like I saw an article recently that said that like an expert chess player feels like the same like adrenaline that like a football player does while playing the game, and it's like like I guess you put yourself like in that mindset, very like concentrate on what you're doing and like focus, and you start sweating and whatnot.
Right. Yeah, it's a crazy. I mean, that's a crazy thing, and I feel like there's a weird sort of creativity that kicks in when you're like, well, and I think I agree. This is sort of a thing. Like I think that there's so many people in comics have one form or another of ADHD, and I know I do.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And I think that it's and I think that there's that. Then you can kick into that sort of hyper focus. That everybody had a problem with when they were a child because because you weren't paying attention to your homework, but instead you were like, you were
doodling,
super focused on drawing, your most favorite cartoon character or whatever. And I think that when you can weaponize is probably the wrong word, but when you can sort of like harness that hyper focus, it's like then you can start creating things that nobody else in the world can create, and that's kind of it's this it's such a cliche to say it's a superpower, but I mean it's kind of
it feels like it.
Yeah, it feels like, oh wow, this is doing work that no one else can do. I can't do my taxes correctly, but but I'm making a book that nobody else in the whole world could ever make, because it's all me, and it's because it's me using like somehow tying together my nine biggest interests into this book that's nuts.
Yeah, it's there's I heard this quote saying like like an amateur like waits for like inspiration, but like a pro like knows that inspiration comes in the middle of work, right? You always have to you gotta already be working for inspiration to like hit you, because that's like inspiration loves like a working man. That's like what I heard.
That's a good one.
That's very true.
Yeah, I mean.
Yeah.
I think that. And I think that, inspiration shouldn't be downplayed too, but I do think that like sometimes it's like you got to already be moving that pen before inspiration's really going to strike, because sometimes it strikes in little ways. Sometimes
you gotta have the brain, like you gotta get the brain going.
Yeah, it doesn't always strike in a way that's going to get you up in the middle of the night to start drawing. It sometimes strikes when it's like, hey, maybe you should draw the leg this way.
Right.
And if you weren't already drawing something, it's not enough to get you going.
Right. How are you expecting to get there if the car isn't already on?
Yeah.
Right. Like that's the kind of stuff. And also about the ADHD comment, I don't blame you, because I think making comics like incentivizes like that, like being like a control freak. Mm-hmm. Although in the previous episode, I said to the other guest that comics is like one of the art forms where it's like okay to be a control freak. Especially like indie, if you're like a self-publisher.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're working like in the industry, of course you got a deadline, right? But if you're just alone, like self-publishing your stuff, where you have like no one else to really rely on, yeah, you could be as much of a control freak as you want,
Yeah, and I think it's interesting too that you can kind of divide it up a little bit two ways, where it's like, well, I like being unfortunately I like being a control freak. I don't like that about myself.
Same.
but because I think it makes me a bad collaborator. And so when I do collaborate, I have to consciously say, I'm really only providing this and relying on somebody
back.
else to pick up the slack. And I think that too, that you can kind of see that how some people, some people, they make their career by being, oh, well, say somebody like Gene Ha, who's this, this complete, like, he can draw these amazing things, and you always want to see his version of a character you've seen before. It's like, oh, I'd love to see Gene draw Wolverine or whatever. And because he has this, it's almost like he's this extremely sophisticated filter that you're seeing it through. Whereas other people are like, well, they're more like somebody who sort of is the architect of an entire story, and like their writing is not as good as the best writers, and their art isn't as good as the best artists. But but taken together, it's this singular vision. And I think that's kind of interesting. I mean, I don't think that that's the two things that people can be divided into, but I think that it says a lot about whether you're ready to work at, whether you're going to be someone who's going to be successfully working at, say, Marvel or DC. Is that it's like if you're someone who needs to control every aspect, you're going to not be very happy there, because either they won't either they won't let you, or or you're going to start bumping heads with everybody. But I think also sometimes when people who are like these fantastic illustrators try to do their own stuff at an indie publisher, they kind of struggle there too, because they're like, oh, well, I was used to people kind of either giving me ideas,
telling you what to do,
or pushing back against my bad ideas, or And
it's that George Lucas prequel kind of mentality.
Right. I mean, sometimes people move fast, but they need an editor, and sometimes people are like they don't need an editor, but like but they kind of need to be allowed to do what they are going to do.
Yeah, I think collaboration works best when whoever you're collaborating does something you can't do. And I think collaboration is a lot easier with filmmaking. Like, I mean, I used to be big on filmmaking before I switched over into comics, and I would collab with a lot of people who make music, and I would kind of let them do whatever they want, because, like, I know for a fact I can't do it, right? So I'll trust them, I'll show them what I got, and then they'll produce something, and if I like it, I tell them if I like it, or if I tell them I want a certain way, blah, 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 right? But I think, collaboration works better when, like, the person you're collaborating with does something you can't do. Right.
Mm-hmm. Well, and you certainly don't sort of ever have that feeling where you're like, well, I would have done it, such and such a way. I mean, but people do sometimes, sometimes you're collaborating with people just to save time, so that you can put more work out. And I think that is frustrating, because when you're a comic book, when it's like I do everything on comics, it's just like, well, if I collaborate with someone, sometimes I don't come to them with an idea that's suited to their art style. I think of, it just it's one that's suited to my art style, and it's like I end up with this disconnect where I'm like, oh, I wouldn't have done it that way, but you kind of have to force yourself to go, but that way's better, especially since that's the way you're gonna do it. I don't have a choice.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I want to write for other people to do artwork for, because I just like the idea that I'm making more comics,
Yeah.
Because, like, who knows how long I'm going to be here for, but I like to have, like, an expansive library of my work, whether or not I drew it, like, just that I have, like, a hand in it,
I go back and forth on that. Sometimes I feel like, oh, I want to do more stuff, and then sometimes I think, oh, I like that everything that comes out, it kind of only has me to blame, like.
I mean, that is true. That's true. It feeds into that ego. I got that too.
Well, and you don't want to. I always don't want to. I never want to let anybody down. I never want to sort of like hold anybody up. Like, oh, they're ready to draw, but I'm still futzing away on the script.
Right. That is true. It's that whole. It's those thoughts, that hold you back. Didn't you also write for a video game or something?
Yeah, I did. I wrote. Let's see. I was not writing the main. I didn't write like the plot. I was basically doing kind of localization
Dialogue
plus.
or
Well, it's kind
okay.
like because the developers were from Siberia, of all
Oh,
places.
okay.
Like the publisher was here in Minnesota, where I live, so that's how I got in touch with them. But they had sort of created a game that was, I mean, it was kind of like an RPG, but it was also kind of like a crafting thing. You were kind of creating bases, and you were creating
It
a
was like a MMO kind
yeah,
of.
it's kind of an MMO. Well, no, there weren't other characters. No, it was just, or there weren't other players. It was just a yeah, it was just you. It's just a single player game. But you would run into a lot of NPCs, and so I was writing all these NPC dialogue trees where you could sort
Oh,
of,
okay.
you could sort of like, make friends with one group or another, and I
Right.
wasn't handling any of the mechanisms by which you would join a crew. So it was interesting because I had to disengage my sense for plot because the plot was kind of taken care of. And
Right.
so it was really just sort of like, oh, well, here's a character, and I have to have a good sense for their personality because if you talk to them in one way, they'll react this way. If you talk to them a different way, they'll react this way. And it all kind of leads to only a couple conclusions. But it was interesting to sort of say, like, oh, it's more about getting sense for personality and like ethics, the ethics of a group, than it was about sort of having characters lead you along a plot when you're just doing a narrative. So I thought that was pretty interesting. I mean, I don't have any connections in video games, so I don't know that how much of that I'm going to be doing, but it was really fun.
That sounds pretty dope. All right, so we got a couple more questions to go through.
Yeah.
This next one is, what are your biggest influence as an artist? Like, what kind of artist inspired you? Or like, what kind of art do you follow and stuff like that? You get me?
Well, I mean, I think that you can. I mean, I think that some you can kind of see. Like, I remember, reading a lot of Will Eisner's stuff. I mean, I wouldn't even really say Will Eisner is a big influence, but and especially since it sounds like, like, oh well, Will Eisner, the classic. No, but
Of course.
but I mean, I liked his sort of take on storytelling and how it was pretty idiosyncratic, instead of being kind of the mainstream stuff that I was seeing when I was growing up. Sergio Aragonés is a huge influence. I kind of read him as a kid. I kind of didn't really look at him a lot as an adult. And then when I was starting my career, I kind of got back into him, like, oh yeah, like, the stuff that all seemed like
great.
gag stuff is so sophisticated and so clever, and the speed at which he was moving was really kind of cool.
Oh yeah, he had a pretty good pacing too, and his I think his art style really like gave him that ability to crank out like a lot of stuff. Because that guy was like working on 3 things at the same time.
Oh, always, and he was doing those sort of like those wordless gag things in the margins of Mad. I mean, that stuff's amazing. But I also like too that he had basically one level of detail. And, every additional thing he added was never like, oh, well, let's make somebody's hair more textured. It was always like, oh, no, we're going to add this more detail. And it's lizard women sitting in the corner of the, this Gru splash page, and the scroll that tells the credits for this comic. Or, I mean, every additional detail was always like an object and a plot thing. And I always really liked that sense, because every little bit of additional work is more sort of lore of this world, visual lore, and I always like that, as opposed to more writing, so because the writing in Gru was always pretty straightforward. I mean, there were a lot of puns, and there were a lot of like, it was very clever, but it was pretty straightforward in terms of its gags and plot stuff. And I liked that he could also add all of this implication of like other world building stuff just with the art.
Very much a master of visual storytelling, which is very important if you want to capture like a market outside your country.
Yeah.
Like, people really like that visual, like, storytelling.
Yeah, and he had that sort of. I mean, there's a lot of sort of silent cartoonists that are sort of from Europe and from South America who kind of don't really have. They know that they can get this much bigger audience if they don't write in their language which only so many people speak, but rather do these sort of wordless gags. Anyway, I always thought that he was such a I just, you know, he's a wonderful person and a great artist. I mean,
very
I
friendly
think,
guy in person too. By the way, very friendly.
Oh yeah, oh he's so nice. Yeah, I've
Yeah,
met him a number of
couple
times over the years, and he's just as nice as can be. So and then like sort of on the flip side, there was people like David Mazzucchelli and Alex Toth, who, you know, like this sort of very sort of stripped down, very sort of, you know, just the fundamentals of storytelling, you know, no extra detail. I loved that kind of stuff, and I did a lot of. I tried to do some of that when I was younger. I don't think it ever really took, but I mean, well, Heck is a little bit like that, because I mean, because I didn't have much time, I was doing a lot of stuff with composition and big black areas and stuff.
Both of those names sound familiar. What were their most like notoriety? What's their biggest notoriety?
Well,
because I heard those names before.
David Mazzucchelli. I mean, the thing that he did that gets reprinted every year is Batman Year One with Frank Miller.
Okay, yeah.
And he also did Daredevil Born Again, which I think was right before that, and then he's also done his own stuff. He did a series called Rubber Blanket, which was these gorgeous sort of oversized magazines that came out in sort of the mid '90s, early '90s.
Yeah.
And he did a graphic novel called Asterios Polyp, which is...
Oh, I read that.
Yeah.
That's a really good book.
Yeah, it's stunning. So, yeah, I mean, I like his indie stuff. I like his mainstream stuff. I mean, he just is, just was this, incredible artist. And then Alex Toth is, you see his designs in all those Hanna-Barbera cartoons, like, and he did he kind of made his money. I mean, after he'd done comics for years, he kind of made his money doing, designs for, like, he designed Space Ghost, and he designed the Herculoids, and he designed...
I could see that. I could see that in Kaijumax.
Yeah.
A little bit
that absurdity, and also, like, there was a certain elegance about the way that he drew that I really, really loved. Alan Davis, he's a... especially when he was doing, he did Detective Comics in the late '80s and Excalibur.
Okay.
And with Chris Claremont, Mike Barr was writing Detective Comics, and he had when he was sort of and he did like Captain Britain for a lot of stuff, and he especially when he was being inked by Paul Neary, he had a lot of that sort of elegance, but more from a cartoony perspective. There was a lot more character acting that I really enjoyed. Anyway, I mean, I could talk about influences literally all day long, because it's but I mean, I also think it's really fun now to see, again, it's like I grew up in the 80s and read comics in the 80s and 90s a lot, and it's like a lot of that stuff is really sort of at least kind of touching the mainstream. And all of those people are like usually white guys, all men, and I think that's and I think now it's really fun to see that comics.
Well, we got people all over.
What's that?
We got people from all over now.
Yeah, well, yeah, and even stylistically, people are. There's so many different styles, and that is the thing that I feel like was very sad about, like, my early career, is that there was, it's like, it was kind of like there was the mainstream styles, a couple variations, and that was kind of it. And now it's like so many different things that you can see, and it's really fun, to not have to watch, amazing artists be crammed into this box, these three boxes that are available.
That's what I love about the internet. It really has created this outlet for more voices, more kind of art, more kinds of like artists to be kind of like shown to the world.
Yeah.
And then we get a lot of amazing works that are like out there, that are strange and unique and are crazy and incredible, and it's beautiful, and I love it.
Yeah. And and like you could see it. I mean, you see it in comic stores, but I mean, even more so, you see it in on Instagram and Twitter, you're like, all of a sudden,
Twitter,
you're like,
yeah.
it'll be like visible women, the hashtag visible women, and all of a sudden you're like, all these visual artists that are on there it's like, I've never seen that stuff like that before. I mean, in some cases you have, but it's like, wow, like, I'm going to follow this person, this person, this person, this person, this person.
Yeah, that's me. Okay, so, all right, for the next, we're gonna answer one fan question from Twitter. Actually, wait, there's one real quick where someone asked, Zach Fig asked, when is season 5 coming back? And then you answered, almost done with issue 1.
Yeah, I'm
right?
actually inking a page while we're talking right now. I'm just drawing like little bushes in the background.
Yeah, I feel that. I should be doing that right now. But when are we gonna get season 5? Do you roughly, like, I mean, if you don't know, you just give me like a rough.
Well,
unless you don't know what
it's like in the next month, or the next month or two. Like I'm late, so it's so it's supposed to be done, and so it'll be done, next week, and then I'll then it takes whatever 2 weeks to print or whatever. So.
If it makes you feel any better, we could always blame me for making you late.
Sure.
So if there's any
sure, we'll do that.
If there's any Kaijumax fans out there, just blame me. I'm the bad guy here. I'm the enemy number 1.
Sure, definitely.
I'm not.
Definitely, we should.
I'm not the hero. I'm not the hero the city needs. I'm the hero the city deserves.
Right.
All right. Okay. Now here's a real question. Do you warm up before drawing the? Okay, wait. This is Armin Gutierrez. He asked, "Do you warm up before drawing the comic? Do you listen to anything while drawing?"
You know what? I don't warm up, and I really should.
Oh yeah.
I mean, because
I learned that lesson.
So I have a studio mate named Peter Wortman, and every day he posts like, "Oh, here's a little warm up," and I really, really love Peter, and I want to strangle him every time he does that. Because it's just like, come on, man, just don't be making us all look bad like this.
Peter out here flexing on you.
Yeah, right. I don't need this. But he, and I think that is really nice. And I mean, it's not like I don't have time. I do have time, but I never really think about it, and I'm afraid I fall into some bad habits a lot of times because I don't warm up. That I just kind of like, I'll end up drawing these these panels, and they get a little bit, and I feel like sometimes they get a little stagnant because of that. So I really should. I every once in a while when I've had more time, I'd sit down and kind of warm up and do like drawing, not life drawing, but like, I'll just draw what's in front of me. Oh, I'll draw that flower pot, and that has actually really, like, I felt like, oh, it helps so much because it just gets your mind kind of out of your usual patterns. So yeah, the answer is no, I don't, but I should. Music. It's funny. I just was thinking about it. I just changed my Spotify. So yeah, I'll listen to wordless songs like soundtracks or like weird synthwave, like playlists when I'm writing or when I'm laying stuff out and like blocking in stuff with words. When I'm penciling, I'll listen to books on tape or books on audiobooks, I guess. I just listened to Treasure Island, which is kind of like, it's like, oh yeah, books like in the 1870s were so slow and so boring, and they're perfect to have someone else read to you,
Right. I agree.
And then when I'm inking, sometimes I'll actually have TV on, because it's like,
oh, okay.
Because sometimes it's like, I'm just filling in little blips and blops in the background, so it's not even like it slows me down, and it keeps me from getting so bored, because I would really kind of get bored if I were just kind of inking details in the background. So yeah, I'll just watch Netflix or something.
Okay, I feel that. I tend to listen to a lot of podcasts because there's like so many now.
Yeah.
Right? So I always got like a podcast like listen to, or I listen to like an album, because people like throw up like whole albums on YouTube. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually, I listen to a podcast called The Flophouse.
I've heard of that.
Yeah, it's on the it's like when the McElroy, like in their network. It's not them, but it's yeah. But yeah, that's that I love that one because it's always like, here's a terrible movie you didn't see. I'd be like, cool, tell me all about it.
Yeah, okay, I feel that. All right, so I think that's okay. That's it for those fan questions, right? And okay, so let's go into this. There's a part of the discussion I really wanted to get into that was like really looking forward to.
Uh-huh.
Let's talk about the real issues, what really matters. Let's talk about kaijus. All right, the real
important stuff. Yeah.
Yeah, this is the part of the interview I was really looking forward to, is talking about kaijus, right? Because I love kaijus. I love them to death. Ever since I was young, I go way back with the kaiju fandom. I remember back in the day when we didn't call them kaijus, we would call them daikaijus.
Right.
That's actually more accurate. Technically, that's the accurate name, right? Because kaiju is just like strange creature, but daikaiju literally means giant monster.
Yeah, if they're just strange, I'm not interested. I need them to be big too.
Yeah, I mean, I like them if they're just strange too, because I'm also a big fan of like the stuff that like Kamen Rider fights, you know.
True.
Kaijins,
yeah,
right?
that's true. But you know, do you ever see the videos of Redman?
Oh, I want to talk about Redman.
Okay, well, so here, but I mean, here's my
great.
weird take on Redman, where it's like, you know, I appreciate it. It's weird, like, you know, you had me at kaiju fights, right? But they're small because they're like whatever. They seem to be the most cheaply made ones of all, but they're small because
like
so they don't have a city to fight around. They're just like in a grove of regular sized trees, and I'm like, this just isn't as fun. I mean, it's funny that it happens, but you're like, if you're not destroying like an oil refinery, I don't know what. Like this just seems seedy. Like it just seems like somebody had a beef with a kaiju and just decided to straight up murder them and leave their dead body lying around.
That's the appeal of like Redman is like, he's not really a superhero. He's more of a Jason Voorhees for kaijus.
Yeah, right. Serial killer.
He pops out of the woods and like he would like pull out his shit and start stabbing them and like just breaking them, destroying them, and it's kind of horrifying. Speaking of that, have you read the comic Redman, drawn by Matt Frank and written by... Damn, I have a copy of it. Okay, yeah. So it's drawn by Matt Frank and written by John Carlo Lopez.
No, I haven't read that, but I mean, if Matt Frank drew it, you know it's going to be looking good.
Oh yeah, I highly recommend it because when I said that Redman is Jason Voorhees to kaiju, that's what this comic is. This is literally just him acting like Jason Voorhees and like showing up to just like I think it's a planet just filled with all the Ultraman kaijus, and he just shows up and just starts murdering them.
Wow.
Just starts wrecking their shit.
So they got the Ultraman license to do this comic where he straight up murders monsters.
Yeah, it's official. Yeah, it's official. What's it called? Tsubayo. What's the name of the company?
Tsuburaya.
Tsuburaya.
Yeah. Oh man.
Right. Like it's an official release, right? Because I think they pitched it to them. And I think because Matt Frank has notoriety in Japan from the Rulers of Earth comics that he did.
Sure. Yeah.
Yeah. Which hot take. I didn't really like that comic that much, but I love Redman. This comic was really great. It was really fun. Also, slight spoiler, but it's also very Twilight Zone-ish.
Oh.
Right. Okay. There's like this weird Twilight Zone angle to it, which is so like. It's so intriguing, and I highly recommend it. Once you finish whatever you're doing, and you're on the clear, I recommend you buy yourself a copy. It's really good.
All right.
And yeah, it's got all the monsters and everything. But I want to talk about monster designs, and I want you to list off some of your favorite monster designs from like whether it's a movie, whether it's Ultraman or some other show. Like what kind of designs do you like? And I think you went into depth with this in an issue of Kaijumax, but like. Let's just reiterate it here for like the audience.
Yeah, I mean, I always really like. I like robot ones. So like any version of
King Joe?
Mechagodzilla, King Joe. Yeah, King Joe is actually my next one. Is like I love him. I used a lot of stuff from King Joe and Imperizer, who's he's an Ultraman villain, and he's got like a gun for a face. That's kind of his distinguishing thing. But I used a lot of stuff for him in the character Jong in Ultra or in Kaijumax, who
Yeah,
grows all the
a
weapons on his
little
back. Um, yeah, I always like those. I always like those robot characters. I always think those guys are pretty cool. I really like weirdly frightened looking kaiju. So like I really like Pigman from Ultraman.
Okay.
You know
I
who,
think that's pretty dope.
and then the other one is Miklas, who is also he's from Ultra 7, and he's like one of the capsule monsters that he'll like throw out at.
Is he the one with like the big horns?
Yeah, like a bull. Like, but he has those weird googly eyes.
I think you've drawn a lot of kaijus similar to that design, I think.
Probably, yeah. Oh,
right?
yeah. I'm always ripping that guy off. So,
I mean, it's a good design. I love how he looks. He's like he's a little guy, but he has these like big horns kind of look.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah. He kind of looks like somebody was looking at some sort of Chinese dragon or something like that. Like, let's steal some of these things. Yeah. Like, let's see who else. I always really like. Well, actually, I really liked. I didn't think I would, but I really liked Shin Godzilla's design. Like, I like the redesign.
Oh, Shin Godzilla is really it's a really iconic like looking design, And I thought, when I first saw it, I was like, whoa, what is this? This is very unique for like a Godzilla design,
Yeah.
Like it looks like Godzilla, but at the same time, it doesn't look like Godzilla.
Yeah, and I think a lot of when I saw it in stills, I was like, yeah, ho hum, it's cool, whatever. But when it moved and all, like it kind of was a little bit more elegant, especially after the legendary Godzilla, who is like the really really almost round,
Yeah, he was
like,
very had really big thighs. I think a lot of people joked about that.
Yeah, and I mean people complain about it, and it's like, oh, you don't need to complain about it. But I mean, I really liked how slim this one was, and then I liked that it would those sort of reflective things would pop down over its eyes when it had the beams come out, like just little details like that. I thought that were really cool, and the beams that shot out of his dorsal plates and
its back,
all that stuff was cool. I've just been looking at the I don't know if it was Subaraya or Saban who did the Spider-Man, like 70s Spider-Man tokusatsu.
Yeah, that's Super. I'm pretty sure that's. No, it's the same company that does the Super Sentai.
Yeah,
which is.
So yeah, well, whoever that was, I mean, because
it
inspired Super Sentai and Power Rangers, I guess. But yeah, like the Leopardon was the
I pronounce it Leopardon.
Leopardon, yeah. But anyway, yeah, his I love that. I love that design. I love the and along the same lines, I like the classic Voltron.
Of course.
I mean, sleek. Anything like that, and or the Macross, plane / robots, and any version of Gundam, all that sort of stuff. I think is really fascinating. Where you're like, oh yeah, like they kind of use the same sort of, they have kind of like a vocabulary of, connectors and like, oh, this is what a shoulder kind of looks like, and this is what a joint kind of looks like, and I mean, I really like how they kind of mix and match, say a couple dozen types of sort of like the visual vocabulary of these robots. I really kind of enjoy that.
You're a very big fan of mechas, from what I get from all this.
Oh yeah, I mean, well, mecha. I mean, that's one of the things that, like, as an artist, that I look at and I'm like, how did they do that? And and as I get more experience as an artist and am forced to sit down and draw them, I'm like, oh, okay, it's not as tricky as it looks. It's tricky, but you're like, okay, I see what they did here. Like they've got a certain way that they do legs, and they've got a certain way that they do arms and shoulders, and So that's I find it to be really fascinating when I look at them and go like, oh, it's really fun to pick apart.
It seems like there's like a language to it, almost, right? Like how you create one. Yeah. Right.
Yeah, and so anyway, I that's just my fascination that I have with it. Yeah. So I mean, all those. I mean, I love all the Ultraman versions. I especially like the one from Ultraman Mabius, who is called he's called Hunter Knight Tsurugi, and he was like sort of an unenlightened Ultraman who was kind of more of a, soldier and less of a, yeah.
Hunter Knight Tsurugi.
Tsurugi. And he then became Ultraman Hikari. Anyway, I always really liked him because I liked that he was sort of like...
Oh, okay.
That he was slightly different in that he was not 100% good. But then he was...
He looks Ultraman-ish.
Yeah. But anyway, I always liked him. And I always liked the, weird characters from Kamen Rider. There's a character who's called like Momotaros, who is like this sort of weird semi-intelligent, like looks like he's in armor. He looks like almost like and he has like almost like a, not an Oni, maybe an Oni face. But he transforms into a sword that one of them uses, and I always thought that was kind of a cool idea, that he doesn't need to be like.
Oh wait, yeah. He's like the Red Devil looking guy.
Yeah. So
I know what you're talking about. Yeah, I love that design. I love this design. It's really gnarly design.
And I love that idea that he's kind of like not really a hero. He's just kind of like a side character who just happens to be the hero's weapon, sword. Almost.
Yeah, very very Soul Eater.
Yeah. Anyway, I thought I just think that's kind of cool. So
yeah, I'm glad that you gave me the in-depth kind of scoop of everything you like. You listed all down. It was really great. Yeah, I'm a big fan of kind of like all the kaijus that don't seem to be really like they're very weird. The weirder the kaiju looks, the better for me. But like for example, one of my favorites is Alien Dada from the original Ultraman.
Sure, totally.
I just love that like pattern, that weird like very abstract kind of art, like a living art piece kind of design.
Yeah.
Right. It really like stands it out. Also, like I like Zeton. Zeton's a really good design because it's like it's like an insect, but it's not really an insect. It's this weird kind of like mutant man kind of insect stuff.
Yeah.
I mean I like that too when it's very like it's like slightly resembles something that kind of exists, but it's not really, like it's taking in some weird turn.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's really interesting too when like all of a sudden things get out of the kaiju or the daikaiju sort of style, and all of a sudden it's like I feel my interest wane. Like I'm like like in I liked Kong Skull Island just fine. I thought it was great. It's fun. I love Kong.
It was just fine.
But then those skull crawlers, it's like they're not quite a giant monster. They just are.
Yeah, they look.
Like
it seems like they come from that same family of design that the Cloverfield monster comes from, with the arms.
But it's like I didn't mind the design so much as they just didn't act like they weren't like a monster. They were just sort of like they kind of skittered around and did stuff. It was kind of like is it Godzilla versus Biollante, where there were like a whole bunch of other like
tentacles.
Like all these little monsters,
and
you're just sort of like, I don't know why that bothers me. Like, or I don't know why that doesn't seem true to. It doesn't bother me, but I don't see why that doesn't seem true to the spirit of a kaiju movie. You know what I mean? Like, but it doesn't for some reason. I don't know why. I
think a big thing for me, and this was kind of like a philosophy they had for the Pacific Rim movie, was that imagine someone is in it like a costume, right? And I think that's very like kind of true, right? Yeah. That I do like the idea that like there is literally a guy in that outfit, or sometimes in some cases it could be like two guys, like Penstar. He's like that bat thing where his wings are like favorite starfishes.
I can't believe I didn't tell you that was my favorite, because he is like literally one of my favorite. That stupid bat. I love it. He's
just two guys. It's two guys in a starfish outfit, and they're connected with a bat head, and it's great. It's amazing. It's like, what is this thing?
I love it. It's the best. It's so stupid. Yeah. I mean, well, and I think too, like it's even more absurd in Kaijumax, but that's totally my philosophy. It's like it's all gotta feel like it's a person in a suit. you know, and even, or if it's not, then it's like something that you could do with a marionette or something, you know, something else. Like,
I mean, that's what I love about Kaijumax. Really, you do really like go you what's the word, you not appreciate, but you very much like honor those designs, you know, like you very much, you don't look down on them. Like a lot of people who probably are ashamed of being kaiju fans would be like, oh, you know, this thing looks stupid, but it's like, no, you're like the opposite. You're like, oh, this thing looks very goofy and I love it.
Right.
I love that it's goofy.
Or
I love that it's
or
out
this
there.
thing
That
looks
doesn't-
stupid and it's my favorite thing in the whole world.
Yeah, it looks stupid, but that's what makes it great. That's what makes it, that's beautiful to me, you know, how silly this thing looks. Right? It's got so much character.
I mean, I always think it's too bad when it's someone, like, there's an Ultraman comic from wherever. You know, people have licensed it a bunch of times over the years, and you pick it up, and it's almost like you hear that person going like, oh, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to make Ultraman look tough and badass. And it's like, no, I mean, Ultraman is tough, kind of, but I mean, he's also like, he's supposed to look like he's in this sort of, you know, this suit, you know, like that's kind of a, I don't know,
That's
like a
kind of the appeal.
wetsuit that doesn't really fit that great. You know, he's not supposed to be jacked. Like, he's not supposed to have big shoulders or abs. He's supposed to just look, you know.
I think Matt Frank said it best. I can't remember if this is exactly his quote, but like the appeal of like tokusatsu, it's like the same appeal as like wrestling, where it's like, yeah, we know it's fake, but like, so what? Like, that's like, the point is like the aesthetic, you know, like we just like the way it looks, you know, who cares if it looks fake?
Yeah.
You know?
And it's absurd.
I think Matt Frank
and if
said
you
that.
make
Don't
it
quote
look
me that.
too tough or too cool, it doesn't, it's not as absurd, and then it doesn't, you know, just doesn't have the same appeal.
I think save that for the anime, but like, then again, I love it when in animes when they're accurate to like a suit costume, like was it the recent anime, what was it called? I forgot. Oh, Gridman, Gridman. Have you heard of that anime?
I've heard of it, but I haven't seen it.
Okay, well, what's great about that is like, so you heard of Gridman, right? Like, he was also kind of like a Ultraman like superhero, also Subaraya.
Okay.
Right? Yeah, like his gimmick was that like he would go into cyberspace and fight like kaijus in there.
Okay.
Right? And so in the anime, it's kind of like a sequel to that. It's kind of a low-key sequel. Like, there's small references to the previous one. But what's great is that all the monsters he fights act like suit actors. Like, down to the T, they act like suit actors, right? And he'll fight them down, too. And also, like, a weird thing, all the characters are, like, low-key, like, based off of, like, Transformers for some reason.
Okay.
Actually, no, there's a thematic reason why they're all kind of based on Transformers that's revealed at the end, right? I don't want to spoil it for you. But it's SSSS Gridman. It's really good. I think it's only 12 episodes, you know, so if you ever get free time to watch it.
Yeah.
But yeah, all the monsters there are very accurate to suit actors. And when I saw that, I was like, okay, yeah, I dig this show.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, I think, you know, and it can be fun if it's not accurate to that too, but I think that probably, like you say, it's like, it's too bad when people are ashamed of the things that they like, you know?
Yeah.
You know, tokusatsu is fun, you know, so are a million other things. Like, I mean, when people are ashamed that they like the movie Twilight, it's like, who cares? Like, like what you like,
look,
you know?
Look, guilty pleasures, calling something a guilty pleasure is for the weak, right?
Right.
It's very much like, the only thing you should call guilty pleasures are when someone involved was actually like arrested or did a crime.
Right. I mean,
those should be the only guilty pleasures.
That's a weird thing, but like, yeah, it's. I mean, I think don't be ashamed. Don't be ashamed of that. It's like, I mean, I think that sometimes you can sort of say like, oh well, I like certain things one way and I like certain things another way. Like, I like Godzilla movies in a different way than I like, you know, Downton Abbey. You know, like, they're not all the same.
Yeah, like they both have different appeals.
Yeah, like, I like it and I know that it's dumb. Like, and I think that's why people say guilty pleasures. It's like, yeah, it's dumb, or it's not for everyone. Like, I'm not, like, some things that I like, I'll be like, oh, I will recommend it to you. And, you know, some things I like, I'll be like, well, you probably wouldn't like it because it's dumb, but, you know.
Damn, speaking of recommendations, I think I mentioned this to you back when we first met at San Diego Comic-Con, where, like, I kind of have trouble recommending Kaijumax to people.
Too, yeah, no kidding.
Not
Me too.
yeah, it's very, because it's incredibly, it's like it's incredibly niche, you know, and that's like, it's tough, you know. You have to like try to like convince people, and like, I mean, recently I met one person who already reads Kaijumax. I'd be like, oh, I love Kaijumax, and I'm like, oh my god, this person's my soulmate.
Right? Yeah. Oh, thank God.
Yeah, they're great. They're probably listening to this, so you know, shout out to them. But yeah, it's tough because like I figured like just by telling them, okay, so just get a prison drama but with giant monsters, like it, I don't know, for some people it just doesn't, saying that just doesn't work for them, you know. So it's like damn, how do I like go about like selling this to people?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it was like, I mean, with my previous book, Heck, it's like I would sometimes go to like, you know, book fairs or things where like it's a little bit more of a an older audience and stuff. And that book would do just fine because it's like it has a very novel-like pacing. It has, you know, and it's like people can get the, oh, it's based on Dante's Inferno. Oh, that's smart, you know, or whatever. Like, but
yeah,
then
it's like a modern Dante's Inferno. Oh, Dante's Inferno, that's for smart people.
Right,
like
right.
me.
Oh, good. Sounds just like a college boy would make, you know, or whatever. But like, but Kaijumax, yeah, it's like, you know, I really feel like, you know, I think it does okay at indie book shows too. But like, it really, it's like it's not a mainstream book, but it's like you have to kind of be immersed in the genre, exactly. The world of genres, and have somebody say, oh, it's a mashup between these two genres which don't normally mash up, and you go, oh yeah, I'm on board. Because I mean, you say that to a lot of people, you know, people who are like, you know, friends of mine who aren't in comics, they're like, it's a what now, you know, or like like that they just don't get it. They're like, oh, nice art, looks like it's really good and for kids, and I'm like, haha, yeah, no, it's not at all.
It's not for kids. It's not. I mean, and also, like, this isn't like, I'm not trying to disrespect you or anything, because I mean, what I'm gonna say right now, to me it's a plus. To me, it's like, mwah, it's beautiful, right? But like, this is kind of hard for people to get into. But there is a lot of like references, you know. There is a lot of like direct, like parallels to other stuff, and you also create your own unique language that kind of gets a little bit tough to get into sometimes, you know.
For sure.
Yeah, like my Liza, you know, like stuff like that.
Yeah, well, and I think too, like, if you explain it, people will be like,
against that.
Yikes, that's
nothing against that.
Well, no, but I mean, but people kind of go like, yikes, that sounds like a racial slur, and it's like, well, yeah, I mean, it's not wrong, but
it's like world building, you know, like, because you're doing this whole parallel to like you're this big social commentary about the industrial prison complex, right? And you can't just like, they're not gonna say real racial slurs because they're giant monsters. They wouldn't say that. So you got to make it like your own that are like intertwined and based off of like pre-existing like references to other stuff.
Yeah.
And I mean, I love that. I think that's great. That's beautiful. That's very like, you expand your lore and whatnot, right? But for like, I feel like that's like another barrier for people that's pretty tough. You get me?
For sure. And it's hard to sort of like, you know, and if it does get more attention, all of a sudden it's like I find myself in the position of having to defend kind of riskier moves like that, you know, like the pseudo racial slurs and sort of the assault, you know, and it's like it gets a little bit tricky, like, you know, and my God, every time there's if there's an article about it and people are like, you know, here's a comic by my Liza Zander Cannon, it's like, please don't say that.
Oh,
like,
God.
I'm like, please don't.
What have I created?
It's like, I get it. It's world building. It's within there, and I get that it's kind of a funny thing. Kinda. It's become less funny to me over the years, but like, I wish we wouldn't foreground that quite so much because because it's like, I don't, you know, and really it's like, I'm not really trying to have a parable about race, because I think that gets super problematic super quick, because you're like, wait, are you saying that you know, that minorities are like giant rampaging monsters? And it's like, I'm definitely not saying that.
Like, if it makes you feel any better, as a minority, I wish I was a giant monster. But like, yeah, I get that. And like, yeah, like whatever you're gonna do, you're gonna get those kind of critics.
Sure.
You know, especially if you are talking about, if you're doing social comic there, you're gonna get that kind of stuff back at you. You know, that kind of specific criticism, like, oh, is this what you meant? Right. And like, But at the same time, I feel like you probably be able to figure out whether or not someone actually read the book by the way they talk about the book. You get me?
For sure. And I mean, some
Right.
people will be like, I couldn't get past this one scene, and it's like, no problem. Like I don't hold it against you. It's not for everybody at all. And then it's
Right.
and also, and I mean, I also think, well, the book has sort of reached sort of a critical mass of people who are like, oh, this is a very well made comic, so I don't have to feel like that people, if somebody doesn't like it, that, oh God, nobody likes it. Like it's comforting to me that it's just like, well, it's gotten enough sort of plaudits that I can kind of rest easy that it's not, that it's hitting people the right way. People that are open to it, it's hitting them the right way. You know what I mean? But yeah, I mean, the first issue I made, 5-6 years ago, and it's a little, it's like, it hasn't aged as well as I would have hoped. Like there's stuff in there that I'm like, 2016 made a lot of that stuff.
Okay, but now it's like,
Yeah, it's like, and so, so like we talk about, we're always talking about making it into a TV show and stuff like that, and a lot of that stuff, and a lot of stuff, I'm like, yeah, I kind of hope that there's a couple things that I don't know if we necessarily need to tone it down, but like, let's pick and choose what we want to directly put on, a Netflix series or whatever, not necessarily the Netflix.
right, yeah.
But
I mean, it's cool that you think about that stuff. You're aware about that stuff. A lot of people a lot more, I guess, insensitive kind of people wouldn't worry about that stuff, right? And it's pretty dope that you're like fully aware of that stuff. You get me?
Yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know. I hope I just don't want to. I feel like it was interesting that I was so unafraid of sort of putting sort of basically racial sort of drama
Language.
with a very thin coat of kaiju paint, like just out into the world. Like why was I so confident to do that? So and so I mean, it's like, well, I continue to do it, so it's not like it's not like I'm not doing it, but I do think that like every time there was a point where I was like, I need to make this about people, I need to make this about people who have no power. I need to make this about, like that it takes on racial things. It seems like a situation in which there is a racial component, but that's not really what it's about. It's about power. It's about prison. That kind of stuff.
Yeah, which is really smart of you to like have like the prison guards be legit Ultramen. Because like you watch those old shows and it's like Ultramen are overpowered. They are overpowered superheroes. Because they just come in and they just need 10 minutes and they already like took out the monster.
Well, yeah, I mean, they even made it 3 minutes so that it was like even more so, like like, hey, this.
Right.
If the thing, or like the light goes out after 3 minutes, he's hosed, so he's got to. Yeah, he's totally overpowered.
So he's got to like just take you out. Yeah, the Ultraman is overpowered, right? And Redman is like the Punisher of Ultraman,
Right.
But yeah, I think, yeah, it's really great. You got that in mind. It's dope. I'm trying to think if there's anything else about kaijus like I want to talk about, but I think we said enough. Oh, but so I also want to say that one of your most recent kaiju designs that I really dig was Space Baby Go-Go. I think that's her name, right? I love her design. I
really
legit do love her design because it feels very Showa era, and I'm like a big fan of of the designs in the Showa era, not really like all the Showa movies, but I think in the Showa era there was kind of there was less of a fear to be kind of weird.
Yeah.
As the time went by, like people try to like kind of like tone down on all the weirdness, like don't like don't make another green cyborg chicken that shoots red lasers, even though that's like
that's the best.
Wow, like a memorable.
Yes.
It's a memorable design. That's like one of my favorite Showa era Godzilla movies. Godzilla versus Gigan. That's such a good design. Like people today still like it.
Oh, I know.
They brought it back for
and
Final
so,
Wars.
Yeah,
right?
it's so silly. I love it. And the claws and then the saw.
He has a buzzsaw. He has why he's got a buzzsaw.
Yeah,
it's great, right? Which is why I like Space Baby Go-Go, because it feels like she's from like that era,
Well, and I wanted to. I mean, I think it's funny too, because it's like I came up with the name before I even thought she was going to be a character. You know what I mean? Because she's mentioned in like 2 seasons before she shows up.
Right.
But because I always really liked when, I mean, people remember certain things about kaiju movies, but I like that when there's always this little incidental stuff, like why did all the best, like all these 60s ones have like surf rock in them, or like in Hedorah, Godzilla versus the Smog Monster.
Oh,
it's
definitely.
There's so much like youth. It's like youth culture and like go-go dancers and stuff like that. Like I just thought that was. I love that kind of stuff that gets kind of brought back. That like not everything has to be updated to the modern era. Sometimes it's like this is a period piece. It's super stupid, and there's a lot of incidental stuff that just doesn't play today, and that's what's great about it. And so anyway, and I wanted to give her sort of the beehive hairdo, and make her of another era.
Love it. I think it's very beautiful. 10 out of 10 design. One of my favorites. High praise.
It's funny. She's not really. I hadn't really thought of her as being like my favorite design. Like let's see. I really liked the character of Goat.
Oh yeah, Goat. He's adorable.
No, not the one who is a goat, but the woman who's named Goat, who's the goat skull on top of like the tentacles.
Oh yeah, she's like supposed to be. I forget the name.
Yeah,
she's based on a Cthulhu monster.
Yeah,
right?
she's like Shub-Niggurath. And
yeah.
And I mean, she was a pain in the butt to draw because I would always have to have Google image come up and like, okay, where's the goat skull? So I get it right because it's hard, But yeah, she was fun. She was a pain to draw, but she was kind of fun because I felt like she was so detailed that she kind of lit up the the panel, or it always looked more detailed.
I mean, I like her design. I like her character. I liked her kind of like role in the last season.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was very like interesting. It was very like I like where it was going. But not gonna lie, when I pick up my kaiju based book, I'm always gonna like gravitate more to the more kaiju kind of like designs. You get me?
Yeah.
Right? Because you do have your like fair share of like kind of like Western. Like you do a lot of cryptids.
Yeah.
Like they're their own like gang in the book too. Which I like. I like that there's this like gang warfare going on.
Yeah, I like the cryptids. I mean, I don't like the cryptids are like unambiguously the bad guys, but like I really like those designs too. Like especially that there's like you can kind of look them up and use the ones like those are the. It was fun to like with kaiju stuff. You kind of have to say like, oh well, I picked a bit from here and a bit from here, and it's kind of like this one, it's kind of like that one, but it's legally distinct. But with the cryptids, you're like, oh no, I want to make this one literally the Mongolian death worm, and I want to make this one literally the bunyip, so that people would that people who know cryptids would be like, oh hey, it's my favorite one.
I really like that one like kind of like mandrill like furry with the crab hands creature.
Oh yeah. That I killed.
That's
I killed off because he.
Yeah, I know you killed off.
It's funny because it's funny about who gets killed off in like these big like explosions of violence, and it's just like if you're hard to draw, you're dead. If you're
smart move.
Yeah, and anybody who's just like, oh, I didn't really like this character, dead. And so but then he died because I was like. It never made any sense that he had the crab claws. He doesn't look like a cryptid.
Well,
I was like, I like the design, but it's like that just doesn't make any sense.
I mean, yeah, when I looked at him, I was thinking like, is he supposed to be like the skunk ape? What is he supposed to be? And I'm like, but he has crab hands, and I was like, well, I guess is he like some weird kind of like B movie kind of monster, like weird like swamp creature kind of thing?
And he really should have been more like actual Bigfoot or Sasquatch, but.
But not gonna lie, I'm a fan. I like the design.
Okay, good. Well, I
I'll
like
tell
the
you right
that
now.
was the thing. I like the design, but he didn't make any sense. So I was like, well, he's
I
got
mean,
to go.
if you want to kill them off, I don't mind. It's your comic. You know, you decide who gets to live or die, right?
Well,
and I decide if I want to buy it.
It's
so.
funny too because it's like I feel like I have an instinct to never want to kill characters, which seems hilarious to me because it's like I've probably killed off a dozen or more characters. You know,
you killed off both of your like Godzilla like stand-ins, right? Because you had two of them.
Oh yeah, right. Well, yeah, because Zon, yeah, and
Zon
Ape Whale,
and the gorilla whale, yeah,
yeah,
literally Gojira.
yeah. He well, and it was just like, but you know, brought back his son. He's like the Shin.
I like that his son. Yeah, his son went Shin Gojira. When I saw that, I was like, wait, hold up, I recognize this.
I know, and I think that's going to be fun. Like a lot of people are like, "Oh, did you kill him off at the end?" And it's like, "Oh no, if someone didn't die on screen and I like them, they're definitely staying alive." So,
yeah, like he's still alive. Yeah. Also, like, okay, here's a little complaint about that issue.
ooh, okay.
We didn't get to see much of the riot. I thought we were gonna get more shots of the riot. Not gonna lie, because the cover was like a riot, and I'm like, okay, cool, this is gonna be the riot issue,
right?
But
it's
like,
gonna be dope.
we didn't get much. We didn't get much of the riot, and I was like, oh, come on, man.
That's why I did that cover, is because it was like, you know, it was a little bit underwhelming but so it's like, because it's the whole thing is like, oh, there's blood and guts everywhere, but we're just following people around, you know, following characters around.
Yeah, I mean, that's a cool. I don't know. At the same time, like, I get why he did that cover, but at the same time, it's like, man, I was expecting a riot.
I know. Well, you know, that's comics for you. Disappointments all the way down.
Damn, fuck comics.
Yeah, no kidding.
But it's fine. I'll let it slide this time.
Okay,
but,
good.
Fool me like that one more time. I'm gonna delete the podcast from the YouTube channel.
Okay, good.
No, but other than that, it was a great issue. Amazing, 10 out of 10. Okay, let me just mention another issue that I really like real quick, and then we'll get to the last two questions as fast as possible. Okay, so big fan of the rap opera issue. Hands down, one of my favorite issues. I thought it was amazing. After reading that issue, I was thinking to myself, all right, the only reason I want an animated Kaijumax series is for this to get to this scene, because I want to see this animated. And if that doesn't happen, I want to become rich so I could just hire someone to do it for me, right? Because this is amazing. This is like, this is beautiful to me.
So I gave a copy of that issue to Lin-Manuel Miranda because I met him. Mm-hmm. I met him at San Diego last year. And so he was like, "Oh, sweet!" Like, you know, I mean, he's being polite, but like, you know. But I told him, I was like, "Well, I did an homage to Hamilton that was like it was like a retelling of Gojira," and he was like, "What?" You know, like I'm like, "Yeah," and I put in Raymond Burr so I could say, "Are you Raymond Burr, sir?" And he was like, "Really?" Anyway, so he was being very nice about it. But I gave him the copy, so I'm sure it is sitting on his bookshelf somewhere, unread. Damn. But
at least he has it.
It's out there, and so I mean, and again, it's like that when we talk about making it animated. Those are the things that make me excited because it's like, just rehashing the plot. Well, that's fine. I mean, that would be great too. But the idea of having characters have voices, having talking about who would be cast, and I mean that was really kind of interesting too, because these, we were talking to the showrunner guys, and they're like, well, with animation, nobody's completely out of reach. Like, you can get the biggest star in the world because how long does it take? They're in LA. They just drive down, to give all their lines in 4 hours, and they're done. I
hope you pick people that have history doing voiceover over giant monster movies to just keep the references coming. Keep the little Easter eggs coming.
Or I mean, get any actor from Oz. Like, how amazing would that be?
That'd be crazy. That'd be amazing.
Or
really amazing.
And it's like, and I was like, get a rapper for the Humongo brothers. Like how neat would that be? And I just think that too. Like, then you would start to see oh, this is who these characters are, and it would give them some personality that's, a little hard to do in comics because it's like differentiating the way that people talk, without sort of writing in a patois, like it's neat to have people just differentiating their voices in subtle ways that you can really only do with actual audio. And I just think, like we were talking about, like wanting to get Sterling K. Brown as Electrogor, which I think would be really awesome. Or my vote was Common, to get Common as Electrogor. but anyway, like
that'd be gnarly. That'd be very interesting. That'd probably bring a lot of eyes to it.
I think that'd be pretty cool. So anyway, we just the idea that like all of a sudden the music and the like the audio, like you could put in so many audio cues, like and have a soundtrack that would have like a surf rock component to it. How amazing would that be to have like something kind of so dissonant against this against this sort of hardcore background that you have this sort of like not quite Beach Boys, but like this sort of like surf guitar in the background.
Also, you gotta have a military march. You just gotta have a military march.
Oh, totally.
It's so crucial to have a military march. That's one of the things I didn't like about Pacific Rim is that they had a military march for 10 seconds of the movie.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, I need the Grand Opera military march.
Yeah.
That 8-minute long military march.
Right. Yeah. But they never had they never had deployed all the tanks and stuff like that because they had the Jaegers. Like that was always what accompanied the tanks and the maser cannons and the jets and stuff like that.
That's true. I mean, then again, they did have that really sick like rock theme song, but that's also a really good theme song too.
Totally. That's on my playlist that keeps coming up when I'm
the
writing.
Kaiju playlist.
Yeah, the Kaiju playlist.
Yeah, I have one of those too.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that and oh damn, I forgot I was gonna say something else. But yeah, this is great. I'm gonna make an episode later with hopefully a friend where we're just gonna like the Kaijumax just like love fest. We're just gonna say everything we like about Kaijumax, all in an effort to get people to read it, because I feel like more people need to read this. It's really great. I don't want to take more of your time. Just 2 more questions, and then we can get out of here. All right. Okay. So, this other question is what are your future plans? What are your future plans like after Kaijumax? I think you mentioned animated series, but like, is there anything else besides like an animated series you want to do?
Well, I mean, with Kaijumax, it's planned to be 6 seasons, so I've got 2 left, and
right,
and part of that is just like. I mean, I don't want to do it forever. Like it's fun, but I also feel like, well, I have other interests besides kaiju. As impossible as it would seem.
I agree, yeah.
But it's, but I also wanted to get back to doing things in a different formats. I wanted to do a book that was, like I wanted to do some more sort of novel-like graphic novels that were, more like chapters and like. And I think that I was going to do like one that's
for the big brain audience, of course.
Yeah, the big brain. Yeah, totally. Well, and I also think, I mean, I've been for like 5 years. People have been like, "Oh, wow, what a great comic for children," and I have to like slap my hand down onto the comic. Do not, And I, part of me is just like, I really should do like a middle reader or YA novel, a graphic novel, because it's like. It got to be easy to sell. I mean, easy to like sell it to people, and I think that all of my stuff will naturally have like this component of melancholy, but I also think it doesn't have to be violent, and I think that there's and it's kind of fun to give kids or young adults, teens a book that is a little bit melancholy in its. Right, in the way that it's told.
They gotta learn young,
Yeah. Well, and so I've been wanting to do that. I mean, I've got a bunch of other sort of like, genre mashup books, or like a straight science fiction story or stuff like that. I also, as much as I said I'm tough to collaborate with, I have some friends that I'm going to be doing some writing with, and
cool. It's time to work on that collaboration skills.
Yeah, I know. I gotta practice, but it, and that's fun too, because it's like it's fun to sort of take something with some, to be working with someone so talented that you can kind of say like, oh, all right, here's my script, and then also here's my intention. So, here's the ball, run with it, instead of kind of having to. I don't like to micromanage, even though that's my instinct. You know what I mean?
Right.
And so I think that'll be really fun. I mean, again, it's like it's fun to. I like that Kaijumax has as a work. It's like, it's given me the opportunity to say, like, there are some people who are going to be waiting for my next thing, and they want it to be in my style. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
so
that's
they want to have something that's absurd, something that's sad, something that's like grotesque in certain ways, so that I have this I don't know the right word, but like a sort of a mandate to do things a certain way going forward. But it isn't sort of like what's that?
An expectation?
Well, I mean, like an expectation, like a brand that I don't have to sort of say like, oh well, I guess I gotta do.
I guess I'm the kaiju guy now, right? Or
right. That it's not necessarily going to be a kaiju thing, but that also, it isn't like. I mean, it's not like it's made me rich for sure, but it's but I mean, I don't sort of feel like I'm gonna have to. I have to make things that will make me rich after that, or I don't.
If it doesn't make you rich, what's the point? That's what I say.
What's that?
If it doesn't make you rich, what's the point?
Right.
What's the point? You might as well just stop.
Yeah, you might as well just stop. Oh man, I've thought about it. I've thought it before. That's for sure. But
yeah, we all get that.
But I mean, I do like that. I do like that. One of the things that's come out of this is a brand, and I do think there's a medium-sized to small but receptive audience for the thing that I would want to do, and I would be very, very happy to do it instead of begrudgingly doing something that might make a lot of money. So.
Right. Yeah. Like I agree. Sounds really damn. Something you said earlier, I was gonna have a comment too, but I just forgot what that was. Whatever. Okay. So anyway, so last question. All right. So at the end of the podcast, I always like to have something that the audience could kind of do, right?
Okay.
Not really homework, but something like extra. Like for example, at the end, I always ask the guest if is there any comic that you besides Kaijumax, besides Heck, besides everything else you were involved in, any other comic that you recommend our audience to read, right? Like that you always want to recommend it, like deep down you always want to recommend this comic. You want more people to read a specific comic or whatnot. Is it what comic would that be?
Well, I mean, one of the ones that I've read recently is Jason Shiga's Demon. I don't know if you read that, but I mean,
that sounds familiar.
It's nuts. Jason Shiga is this great art, like this great comics writer. But again, it's like he's got this thing where his writing and his art. Like his writing is fantastic, but it's not showy. It doesn't have there aren't beautiful bon mots in every phrase. Like it's straightforward writing, but it's so tight. And then his art is very simple. It's scratchy, but the experience of reading Demon. It's like it's four volumes. It's like 750 pages. He takes this sort of like science fiction premise, which I won't spoil, and takes it absolutely to its furthest, most absurd extreme, and examines all of these aspects and facets of it, which are absolutely fascinating. And he does it in this absurd way by making this character that is like sort of absurdly amoral, and then like these antagonists that sort of like can muster unbelievable amounts of effort and money and expense to try to capture him. I mean, it's the craziest. It's one of the craziest books that I've read recently, and it's this masterpiece. I mean, you have to be ready for it because it's pretty grim and inappropriate.
Okay.
But yeah, it's fantastic.
All right, guys, it's very grim and very appropriate. I think I read one of his book. I read Empire State.
Yeah, that's a great. But Empire State is very straightforward. Like,
oh yeah,
it's
like kind of this,
it's just a love story, or a love story with a twist. But I mean, yeah, this is definitely not like that. But I think it actually might be the same main character.
The design looks just like the same character.
Yeah,
right? So
Jimmy
is this like
Yee.
the same universe?
Yeah.
Is it like the same universe or like an alternate universe kind of thing?
Who knows? There's no explanation forthcoming, is my understanding. But yeah, it's absolutely great. He also did a book called Meanwhile, which is like it's a graphic, or it's a graphical choose your own adventure book.
Oh, okay.
That again, it like takes that premise to the absolute absurd extreme. Like there's a series of pages where you have to enter the correct code on a 3-digit code, and you follow the letter, or you press, you're like, oh, I pressed 3, and so it takes you to the next page. And so like there's just dozens of pages dedicated to making this 3-button code work, and if you do the right 3 buttons, it'll take you to the right to the right page. It's absurd. I don't know how he did it. He must have. I mean, it's like paper engineering of a microchip. I don't know. It's madness. I don't know how he did it.
That sounds pretty. That's pretty awesome. All right, this Jason Shiga guy, Demon. I'll definitely check that out once I got time.
Yeah.
There's things I read up before I invite like other guests. I think, okay, when we're done recording, I'll tell you who next I have in mind.
Okay.
That I'm going to try to get in contact with. I don't want to spoil it here.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah, go read Demon by Jason Shiga. I'm going to put a link to it down in the comments. As well, I'm going to put a link to all your social media too.
Okay, great.
Zander, down in the comments. Because no one reads the descriptions. People go straight to the comments, right? So that's where you're going to get your real clicks, your real links.
Yeah.
All down there. What you got? You got Twitter?
Yeah,
I think you're on
Twitter, Instagram, Facebook that I don't check very often. And,
okay, I'll put that too. Whatever.
and Kaijumax.com is my Tumblr, which I also don't do very often.
Okay, do you have a link to like where people could go directly buy Kaijumax, or do you just want people to just type in Kaijumax and buy it?
Yeah, I mean, you can just buy it on Amazon, or actually buy it at your local comic book store if you can.
Yeah, but, please keep your comic book stores alive, please.
Yeah, but otherwise, you can get it at any online store.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay. Highly recommend it. All right, Kaijumax. Okay, so that is it for the pod. Okay, actually, one more thing before we go. I have to apologize to Mr. Zander Cannon. I have to apologize him because, like, before this podcast started, it was like a 30-minute rut of, like, me going round and round trying to, like, record both sides. And, like, and I was being an idiot the whole time. And Zander here was like, I could just record on my side. And I'm like, oh, my God, I didn't realize that. And I remembered he said at the beginning, but I ignored it because I'm such a child. I'm an idiot. I'm a buffoon. I'm sorry.
Well, all us child idiots have to stick together.
I'm sorry. I hope this doesn't ruin our relationship.
Yeah. Oh, it's ruined irrevocably.
Look, all I want is more people to read Kaijumax. That's all I want. I want the Kaijumax animated series. I want the live action movie. I want the Korean drama.
Oh,
I
me
want
too.
I want the redesigns where they get the kaiju and they redesign it to look hyper realistic and they sell it like on a stand for like $200. I want that.
Totally.
Like that's all gotta exist, by tomorrow, hopefully. But besides that, thank you Zander Cannon, for coming on to the podcast, and hopefully you enjoyed your time.
Oh man, it's been great.
And thanks. Okay, and thank you everyone who's listening to the Cheesycast. Don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel and watch previous episodes. And you know what? And I think we are done.